A reading from St. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 14. Immediately after feeding the crowd with the 5 loaves and 2 fish, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning, Jesus came walking toward them on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The Gospel passage of this Sunday is one of the better-known episodes. Most people remember Jesus walked on the water. But what is more surprising is Peter also walked on the water. And an even more surprising fact is that the water Jesus and Peter walked on was rough and high because of a storm was raging. Some may imagine Jesus walking on the glassy, calm water surface. Some may be even tempted to step on peaceful water. But the water in the Gospel was diametrically the opposite. The disciples in the boat were struggling against the storm, and they were worried about their life. When they saw Jesus, they might have thought a ghost from the netherworld came to bring them, and were terrified and cried out. Against these raging winds and waves, Peter asked Jesus to command him to walk to Jesus. He sounds a little crazy, but Jesus invites Peter to walk on the water, and Peter walks on the water. But as soon as Peter notices the strong winds and gets frightened, he starts sinking. He is about to be drowned. However, Jesus saves him immediately. And both came to the boat safe. The storm is gone. The boat arrives at the shore. One may remember this episode only as Jesus walking on the water. But why did he do that? Jesus could have hovered in the air while riding a carpet. What Jesus really did in this account of walking on the water is that he saved Peter and the disciples from the stormy sea. He reveals he has power over nature. He shows he can defeat the power of death. He demonstrates he is the source of life. Then, why did Jesus let Peter come to him by walking on the water? As long as Peter had faith, he could walk. But when he doubted his safety because of the wind, his life was actually threatened. To be with Jesus, Peter had to overcome nature. Our life is filled with pains and ends with death. Our world is filled with confusion and contradictions. When we look at this life and world only, we cannot have faith. We all become spiritually dead in skepticism and pessimism long before our death. Only when we keep our focus on Jesus, we can walk over skepticism and pessimism. And as Jesus saved Peter from drowning, Jesus also helps us from our failures when we cry for help. After Jesus ascended into heaven, Peter and the disciples still had to overcome many challenges, pains, and sufferings, and they remembered this incident. After all, our Christian life is as if we walk on the stormy water to Jesus. The Christian life is not a natural life. It is beyond the world and beyond natural life. It is not possible naturally. The grace of faith only makes it possible. The life Jesus gives is not of this life and world. When Peter walked on the water, he was walking the life of grace. When he doubted, he was perishing in his nature. This grace of faith comes from the Lord. This faith itself is beyond our nature, a divine gift. Jesus never told this life of grace would be easy, but he is always willing to help us. Let us take our step on the water, even when it is rough. Let us not look down on our feet. Let us look up to our Lord.